Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. Straight off the bat, right before I push record, rocking around the Christmas tree, have a happy holiday. Everyone's dancing merrily in a new old-fashioned way. That's what I heard. Again, if you didn't catch it before, I love Christmas and I do love Christmas music in and out of season. However, that was kind of a random download. Just taking it at face value, perhaps there is already the invitation to get in the Christmas spirit beyond, the practicality of the holiday itself, if perhaps maybe you don't celebrate, but that merry old time of energy that everyone feels when it's Christmas time, that season of giving, that feeling of joy and peace and love that's just exuberant throughout the realm, really, no matter where you are. Well, at least in this nation, maybe not elsewhere, but certainly in the United States, you kind of can't escape it, whether it be actual Christmas music in the stores or just that jolly old feeling that you rub elbows with, whether you really want to or not. So there's that. Maybe perhaps there is the preparation to be receiving great gifts, and to put yourself in a spirit of joy, to be a vibrational match for them in some regard. And then, of course, as I said, it is November and just barely 2 weeks out from Thanksgiving. So there's that. Once Thanksgiving hits, it's all downhill or uphill, however you see it from there. But I also caught the line as I was just singing it right now. Everyone's dancing merrily in a new old-fashioned way. Question mark. What's a new old-fashioned way? New. So it's something that is fresh. Ooh, I just heard it. It's something, it's like a fresh, it's a reclaimed joy and exuberance and accelerance and celebration. It's like, it's a celebration in the present, but it's for the redemption of something from the past. It's like an old dance in a new time. So maybe perhaps even ancestors being in joy for you having reached a certain milestone or certain destination or a certain presence within yourself, literally presence, no pun intended, but all puns intended, right? I don't know, I'm gonna sit with that. Maybe it'll come up in the meeting. But the Yogi Tea Bag today, which is a surprise now to me and you, says trust creates peace. All right, that's the word for the day. In addition to rocking around the Christmas tree. All right. Oh, I didn't cut the cards, all that chit-chatting. In a new old-fashioned way. I hope you feel what I'm saying on that, because I don't feel like I'm quite saying it the way that I feel it, the way it came up just now. Everyone's dancing merrily in a new old-fashioned way. A new old-fashioned way. It's like traditions aren't lost. Maybe they're revamped. What's to be what's to be salvaged of the past in the most productive sense is so. Not everything necessarily needs to be drudged from the past to the present for the sake of tradition, but some things do get to continue on. Some things do get to be passed down, particularly when we even think about how we celebrate any holiday. Usually it's in the tradition of what you've known, But once you get a little bit older, you start to put your own spin on it. Maybe you still pull out some old ornaments from when you were a kid, or you do dinner you have the same menu more or less, or some certain staples, but you don't quite eat the same as you used to when you were a kid or coming up. So you may have some of the same staples, but then you have some unconventional elements like fish, and if that's not conventional for you, or some more healthy things, seafood or whatever the case may be. So it's like merging the old, the past with the present, and creating something that is nostalgic enough to be to like nostalgic enough for there to be like a connection there, because nothing feels better than nostalgia when it's in a good memory, but also reviving it in a way that suits you specifically, like your new traditions, your new ideas about life, the way you create joy for you and your family, a little bit of the old, a little bit of what makes sense to you. I hope that's making sense. I probably tried to beat it down too much, but I hope you feel what I'm saying, because I feel something there that I want to get out. Which makes a lot of sense, because many of us, as we're evolving and coming into our own independence, it has kind of been like, a tug of war in some regard. Yeah, look at this. Look at that. The world, new cycles, healing, Ace of Pentacles. It has kind of been like a tug of war in a sense, or just, how can I say it? Because it doesn't have to be a struggle per se, but I guess a balancing of who you've always been and who you are emerging to be. Star card. This is someone looking back at the past. You know what I mean? Like an old world cycle that has come to a close and now stepping into some new expression of themselves. But the gifts, say, of the past aren't any less valuable. It's like taking the best of, there it is. Okay, thank you, Spirit. I'm struggling here. It's like taking the best of the past experience, not feeling like you got to throw it all away, And I feel like that's been the tug of war, if anything, because there's a bit of contention between what is no longer serving, or what's outdated or has more or less expired in value, and what is relevant and valuable now. Some things are in fact priceless from the past, whether it be some of those traditions and conventions and ideas and even memories, or people, perhaps people, places, and things. Not everything gets tossed out in the garbage, but deciding what of it stays and what of it goes has kind of been a tricky process for some of us, even within our own selves. Certain ideas about the past, or about ourselves, or about who we are, what we're created to be, what the difference between what our experiences have expressed to us, or even certain projections from our experiences have reflected to us, and who we actually feel an understanding of ourselves, even if it's not becoming, with the star card energy, that raw expression of vitality that is pure, all its own, but in some senses is a compilation of our past experiences, of even our past lives, if you believe in that order. You know what I mean? So it's like taking the value of the sum of the best of all things, and deciding what you really do receive. Like she's looking at him with that cup. Now, the Knight of Cups sometimes is an offer or an advance that you may, as I'm saying, you may want to be questionable about. Depending on who's offering that cup, the origin of that indulgence is really what comes down to whether or not it's truly nourishing for your soul in this present moment. Like literally with the star energy here, she's pouring out from both ends, double fisting in a sense, but she's pouring out from within her. So it's like an emptying of the soul in some regards to kind of see all of what, all of what you are, what's really truly inside, what is the makeup of you, and then deciding from that point, like, okay, I'm gonna keep this. It's not really me. It was good. It was beautiful. I have great memories from it. It was fun while it lasted, but it doesn't really fit into my identity now, or the life experience that I'm looking to create now. Or, I definitely gotta have that, gotta have mom's turkey dressing or whatever the hell. I'm just throwing out random shit now. I love doing it this way. Cause the thing of it is, it's like, I know even for myself in a strange way, it's like I was just thinking about this too. So I know that there's something on this that I really need to get out. But I was just thinking about how, in many ways, some of my life experiences have been envy worthy, you know what I mean? Like in a great deal, like some of the things that I've been exposed to, been privileged to see and do and have as a child, even having grown up in an environment and experiences that wouldn't really have been expected to produce that level of life experience. Like I grew up in the inner city, and, the things that I was able to do as a child, and even growing beyond childhood and through maturation, are still some things that people where I lived and where I even am now never had the opportunity to do. They never had the privilege of that possibility. So it's like, in some regard, you kind of have to take the best and the worst of all things and be thankful more so for the best, but still, have almost an appreciation for the less favorable aspects too, which don't really need to be mentioned in this moment. For the most part, what I'm trying to convey is that in the moment of reflection that I was having, it was very clear to me that the surface of my life has been good, and even that is something that anybody would like die to have, you know what I mean? That would have died to have just the access and experience that I had. And it's worthy of me being able to, because you can kind of, that's where the tug of war comes in, because you have the overt experience and then you have the covert experience, and they kind of clash in some regards, like the consciousness of your life experience and then the subconscious sometimes, don't really mirror each other exactly. There's some grave differences there sometimes, depending on who you are. But it's like, God, if I can't, I couldn't dare completely disregard all the beauty of my experiences, because that happened. That was there. That is much of what has made me who I am, and made me, it contributed to the best of who I am. And I was saying that the tug of war comes in when it's like, should you feel like you can embrace those moments and still even reverence those memories in that time, and even those people and places and things, with the contention of the adverse, the things that weren't so pretty, weren't so beautiful, that were a little bit more dark. It almost feels like what do you call it? What do you call it when you're in two minds? I can't think of it. Cognizant dissonance. I can't get it out. Like a dissonance in your conscious is what I'm trying to get out. Cognizant dissonance. You know what I'm trying to say if you know the term. It's like you almost feel at odds with yourself, because it's just weird. It's just weird. But you can't disregard the things that were good and that actually did happen any more than you can forget the things that you know now that you're a little bit older. Like, even in the most practical sense, that maybe it's all right to have macaroni and cheese for Christmas or for Thanksgiving, and maybe it's okay to have those sweet candy yams and stuff like that. Like maybe it's fine, you know, and it is nostalgic because that's what you're used to having on that day. But perhaps it's kind of like exclusive to that day. It's not necessarily something you would eat every Sunday, you know, or every Sunday dinner like some of our cultures can, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, the nostalgia is cool, but you also probably going to balance out those more heavy-handed cuisines with something that's a little bit more light, a little bit more healthy, you know, a little bit more lean as well, you know? So it's like really the balancing act of healing and coming into your own. You know, really, it really and truly is. So we got the Ace of Wands, so something powerful, some opportunity and new inspiration falling right up under each other. I'm not going to take that, but that was the Page of Pentacles right on the top amidst a whole bunch of other cards on the bottom. Then we got the Knight of Wands. And we have the Six of Swords, and then we have the Three of Pentacles. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we got some intensity of power, inspiration, creativity. It's something new. It's fresh. Perhaps. What can we say about that? Especially with the King of Wands facing it. And this kind of looks like a wreath too when I'm looking at the World card. And of course we know the star, the North Star, that the what's the names, which ultimately is a depiction of us following our own North Star. The star that hovered over Jesus was just him being born into, you know, the fullness of his, like his destiny offhand, you know, not having it already being like clear in his being, like him already being connected to it, if you believe that, more or less. So I'm trying to say it in the best way, in a practical way that we understand it. It's like we're all called to follow that North Star, you know, to be engaged with it. The issue is that we get born into this world and we kind of lose sight of the purpose of our design amidst all, like I was saying, the projections and whomever raised you and kind of taking up their ideals and their energies and absorbing them as yours, and contending with societal standards and orders and things like that. Sometimes it's kind of hard to find your way back to your own North Star, your North Node in your chart that ultimately kind of guides you to your supreme destiny, or at least to that expression of you that is most prosperous and productive. You know, the thing that not only is exuberant from the inside out, but also is the same from the outside in, from the inside out as the outside in. Like what you do, bringing you that joy and that happiness and that peace and that emitting a certain light that shines for others to see, you know, to kind of pique the interest, like, well, what's she doing over there? And then it kind of, you know, the invitation should be not to emulate, but to be inspired to go within self and find for self that same light. You know, that's what more or less we have the invitation to do as spiritual beings having a human experience, you know? So star, and then I was laughing because this kind of looks like a little Charlie Brown Christmas tree, which I have had before, so it's no shade. So we got that right up under this pentacle. So this is like some type of resource, or it's an opportunity to maybe express a new aspect of creativity that either I'm feeling has either lied dormant within you, or that just may be fresh and new to you altogether. I would venture to say it's sort of kind of the two, because like as I mentioned, Jesus is like, he kind of came ready made, but he still had to grow, you know what I mean? Like he still started as a baby, as we all do, you know? And I feel like it's the story alone just is an example of what we're all privy to, you know? Like I said, it just takes a little bit more time and energy depending on your life experience to get to it, you know, to bridge that understanding and awareness of self. But the power, it's like just like a feminine is already hosting all the eggs that she needs for the duration of her entire life in her being, not just as she's born, but in her mother's womb. You know, like they're already formed while you're in the womb. You're already a pre-made package when you come out here to do whatever it is you're destined to do. But this is giving me to someone that has matured in a certain sense to almost become aware of his own power and his own potential, you know, like not even just the potential, but actually becoming acquainted. It's like the potential was here with the King of Wands, knowing what you could do. But now it seems like it's like the evidence of it with the Ace of Wands, like that supernatural essence of you that was almost idealized. Like, oh yeah, I could, you know, be a freaking, I don't know, what could a King of Wands be? I don't know. I'm always lost for an example. But, you know, it's like that whatever the dream is, well, since we're talking about destiny, right? Is what's been put inside of you as a passion, perhaps, that is a possibility. You know it must be to some extent, if you even conceived it as a thought, if it even incites you to any type of enthusiasm or eagerness in the actual body, let alone in the spirit. But like I was saying, like you, from your upbringing, maybe you weren't necessarily on track for what it is that you have idealized for yourself. Maybe you didn't come from that surroundings. You didn't have the support. You didn't have the upbringing, the education. You know, maybe you don't even think you have the talent. Maybe you don't think you have the courage or the boldness, whatever, the confidence with the King of Wands to do it. And then it's like, suddenly you become aware that it's something that not only do you, but you've been doing it all along. It's like the evidence from you it's like you looking at yourself from the outside in and the inside out at the same time, seeing the manifestation material of your passion, seeing your power actually materialize in a way that you can touch, that is tangible, that you have a receipt for, that is physical. There's no question about it. Like, I did that thing, and of course, it doesn't negate that there was spiritual support as it's implied with the Ace of Pentacles and the Ace of Wands, but it was a co-creative effort, that even still would not be in the realm without your agreement with it and your collaboration with Supreme Source to manifest it. You still, even with the grandest dream or even the simplest dream, you still would have had to be the one, as I was talking about, the feminine with all the eggs she needs. The process still has to, there's still maturation, and there's still the process of conception, and there's still the process of carrying the seed and then bringing it to its full term, and then actually delivering it into physicality. It still would have depended on you, regardless of how grand of an idea could have been, or a fantasy even perhaps. And even with the ordinance of spiritual destination, meaning it's your right to do it. Like, this has almost been destined for you to do this thing or be this thing. It's like Jesus still had to come and be Jesus. He couldn't have been like, nah, yeah, I ain't really down with that. You know what I mean? Like, that don't really sound like a plan for me. I don't I don't think I'm up for that challenge. We all have that right. You know, we literally have that will to decide if the things that we conceive and perceive of ourselves to be possible are something that we're going to vibrationally align ourselves to become true, you know, to really materialize. So this is that energy here where not only did you see it and believe it, but you gave life to it. And now it's like the baby's here to some degree. You know what I mean? Like you have given birth to a power that you weren't even 100% sure it was possible to possess. And not only, I can't get off of this because it's not only did you give birth to it, did you bring it to life, bring it to fruition, but you also have somehow been authorized to wield some level of control, because that's the King of Wands, having had found some self-control in his own actions and his own creativity. Now this is like the universe trusting you with something even greater. Like you've done well with that little bit of power you had, which wasn't little at all. It is a king, respectfully. But now I want to increase you in a way that perhaps will even seem like it's bigger than you or beyond you. But know that it only is happening because of you, because you were willing to establish yourself in the third dimensional state as powerful and creative and self-controlled in this regard before it could even be passed down from a supernatural essence. I hope that's making sense. And then this is like some crossover moment that because of this awakening, or not awakening, because it's not awakening, it's what is it? It's like it's really an exaltation, you know, it's an advancement in some way, shape, or form. It's like now you got the upgrade, you've been promoted. That's what it is. It's like a promotion creatively, you know, like you going from the freaking, what do you call them, production assistant to the executive producer, that type of vibe. And it's like now your title has increased, your power has increased, your access, what you have control over in some regard. Like it's not control, but it's like, how can I say it? I'm having a hard time expressing today. It's weird. Your influence, let's say that. Your influence has expanded, and impact also. Now it's like that is what is crossing you into some new territory altogether. So it's almost like just as you got the message that you are powerful and this is how so, and this is what you created, it's like you're almost getting ready to move into a territory that's fresh in such a way that is like, I guess that's what keeps the co-creativity active, is because even as we're upgrading energetically, there's always a new territory that we're moving into as well. And here's the co-creation here with the Three of Pentacles. So it's like there's always going to be a need to be guided in some way, shape, or form, or to learn something new, or be open to experience life in ways, or even experience it yourself in ways that you never have before. So it's like affirmed here, but yet and still it's something all anew, even with this advancement of power, which I guess is how it works anyway, because, you know, at each level of position, there are new responsibilities. So that's what it is. It's like you're taking this energy into a territory where you're going to be expected to wield it, and not only in the force that it's been given to you in, but also with the responsibility of that, of continuing to control that power, you know, because I'm assuming that, not assuming, but I'm sensing that, you know the saying, with great power comes great responsibility. And something such as the Ace of Wands, when you were already the King of Wands, you would have had to have come to some point of self-control to even be entrusted with this. Yet and still, this is such an increase, so much more of an intensity of what you're used to, that you're going to have to, or I should say, you get to find, okay, and this is the crossing over that I was talking about. It's like you're going to have to figure out exactly what is coming with you, the ideas about yourself, about passion, about how power truly is projected. It's like you're experiencing creativity in a whole nother form. The way that it may have been captivated in one dimension of time and experience is not really that way in another. I'm gonna just say it plainly how I feel it. It's like literally moving from an old world perspective to a new world perspective, where you didn't have much facility to work with. I mean, enough that it wielded your this position of power as it is to be the King of Wands. But look at the difference in this progression. Like, this is like literally having power at your fingertips, and in the King of Wands position, being expected to wield that responsibly, not to overexert your power, not to abuse it, not to use it for lower vibrational means or purposes, not to use it against anyone, not to use it against yourself, like literally not to let this power overrun you because it's so big. That's why I was saying, like, it's bigger than you, it's massive. And this is like the crossing over into what was once a reality that you were accustomed to, good, bad, or indifferent, because this really is about a turbulent time crossing over into something that's more peaceful and calmer and things of that nature. So once upon a time, you were used to life being contained in a certain type of way, perhaps with limitation, let's say it like that, where, yeah, you're the King of Wands, but there's a certain ceiling of creativity that you were privy to. It's like now the Ace of Wands is unlimited, with unlimited resources. Imagine the King of Wands in the adverse energy that hasn't learned how to control his urges, control his temper, control his ambitions, his anger, his impulses, all those things. Like, that's not the case with the King of Wands, but just saying that's why it's been so important for us to have been cultivated, like I was saying, good, bad, and different through our maturation phases. All of it has been necessary to bring us to this position of autonomy with power, so that when we got to this unlimited measure of a divine ordinance, we wouldn't ultimately kill ourselves or kill anyone in the process. And look, we still haven't really gotten there, to whatever that full, we are, but we aren't, because the realizations are just really happening in real time throughout this season, with Scorpio being that raw, energetic force that can actually make or break you. Like, it's water, so it can literally swallow you whole and engulf you into even a darkness of such, where you can get lost in your own obsessions and possessions, or it can infuse you and supercharge you in some great regard as well. Exactly what I was saying about the memories thing. It's like that 8th house energy, where the things that just make you tick, that make you who you are, like traditions that you've been doing and you don't even know why you do it, but you just do it because you just always have. You don't even know if it has any true meaning or relevance to you anymore, but you do it because it's a memory, or it's been ingrained in you to just almost operate on autopilot. You don't even like macaroni and cheese anymore, but hey, it's a Thanksgiving tradition, so you gotta make it, type of thing. Why not have an Italiano Thanksgiving if that's what you fancy, and some do because that's their culture. But I'm saying, away from the conventions of the traditional Thanksgiving soul food dinner, as my culture is most accustomed. Maybe you want all seafood, maybe you want Caribbean cuisine, I don't know, but it's like, what gets to cross over with you? Everything doesn't make it over. It's the 6 of Swords. Like, it's the balance of literally what is truly like the supreme current and the 6 is the number of man. It's like balancing between the spirit and the truth of the matter of you. That's what it comes down to. Because like I said, moving into this new territory, you may not even be going anywhere, but the new territory itself might just be this infused expression of power, having unlimited creativity, unlimited force. Consider going from a PA literally skyrocketing to the executive producer who has the authority to make or break the production. That's a lot of responsibility, a lot of people on the payroll that are ultimately under your responsibility and care and some consideration. If the thing doesn't go well, more or less, not only is it a detriment to you, but to whomever else is associated with the project. So a lot is riding on this power force that's being infused by way of you, that it's like you're going to be, it's no longer the rehearsal type of vibe. You know what I mean? It's not the run through. It's like now it's literally lights, camera, action, and you get to put into action what you've ultimately been preparing yourself to handle on a lower scale, but now just probably magnified times, let's say 10, let's just say, and that's where the energy of always being in the co-creative space to be just as submissive as you are sovereign comes into play, because it is new territory, it's new land, it's a new expression of you, it's new responsibility, it's new creativity on the line, more people. This is like a collaborative effort, as I said, and pentacles. Maybe people are standing to feed their families over the ideas that you're about to bring to life. It's not just you with your small business, just you and your hands putting packages together and mailing them on your own. It's like now expanded to a whole operation where literally people's paychecks, you signing people's paychecks, or whatever it is that you've established now is the establishment for others and their stability, for families, for generations. It's a big charge, considering going from, I keep seeing Amazon in my mind's eye, and I'm hearing Jeff Bezos, and I'm like, whatever he started doing, I think it was something obscure in the grand scheme of things. I've seen it before, but I can't think of it right now. To now him being the head of Amazon, and quiet as is kept, if Temu keeps going at it, I'm sure is already quite a competitor to the Amazon brand. You know what I mean? So it's like, what's been established, you almost can never quite sleep on a job, which I hope he hasn't. I hope he's figured some things out. But it's like you can never quite sleep on a job like, okay, I've established this thing and that's it, that's all, no need to go any further, because there's always this opportunity as the world is turning to expand your creativity to new heights, especially when others, say maybe not employees, but maybe even generations after you, are dependent on it. That in itself is a responsibility, especially speaking as I was about carrying on traditions and starting new ones. It's like the things that we definitely get to leave behind are those currents in our subconscious that haven't really been the most high vibrationally contributory to our success. Yes, they've taught us lessons. If nothing else, what we don't want to recreate for the legacy that we're leading. But those are the things that it's easy, like, yeah, definitely we could leave that behind. The things that we get to take ahead with us are those things that we find value in, that do express our identity, whether it be culturally or spiritually or whatever the case may be. They don't have to be shunned, but they also get to be put into perspective as to whether or not they have true value in who you are now, and they actually are prosperous, for the future. Because whatever, as I said, whatever you're consider your holiday tradition, whether it be Thanksgiving or Christmas, now your kids are watching and you're impressing upon them whatever this new tradition mixed with the old gets to be as to what is now a projection for them to absorb for what they're recreating as well. And that's on a practical level. And that's, of course, on a deep spiritual level, on a mental plane, and physically, and every other way possible that you can impress upon the generation that's going to take ultimately carry the baton, So I guess especially for my generation, we've had the charge of really that I feel like I can say this, particularly like if you have what is it like shoot, Venus and Libra, is that it, or Pluto Libra particularly, we kind of had the charge, the balancing act that in some ways is a little bit unfair because we absorbed all of the conventions of society, good, bad, and different, as ultimate truth. We've had the hardest charge to really shake down what no longer serves us, but still having, as I said, to be able to take away what does, and almost create a clean slate for the legacy beyond us, or not, and that's and the ones that are coming after us, our children, are the ones that are really going to make the most difference. Those that are actually Pluto Sag and on and on and on. Those are the game changers. So it's like everything that they've absorbed from their predecessors, from their parents, from their caregivers, and so forth, are the things that they have to contend with, or really are the tools that they have to build with, I should say. So it's been especially a charge on us if you can relate to a generation, more or less, I would say like the millennials in some regard, but those that are kind of on the back, on the tail end of that. Like, for instance, I'm 40. So I'm just, I'm about aged out, in some regard, but just made the cut enough to be impacted by the energies that we've had to contend with. Like I said, where certain things that you felt were right and just the way of life all this time, all these years, through your Saturn return, is when you had to kind of then make a turnaround to really justify what is good and what is not, like what matters and what doesn't, what is truth and what has been an illusion. And it's the hardest for us to decipher, because so much of us was like so much was imprinted on us to almost like even absorb the guilt and shame to conceptualize doing anything different. Like, for instance, maybe you don't want to go home for Thanksgiving, or you don't want to make macaroni and cheese, almost feel guilty for having that idea, because this is what's always been carried out and passed on. But the challenge has been to actually release ourselves from the almost like a obligation to fulfill certain conventions, to fulfill certain traditions, and to live within certain conventions and containments, and be liberated to feel worthy to create something new and fresh, not leaving behind everything, but to feel authorized, literally to have the autonomy to say that may have worked then, but this is what works for me now. And this is what I'm going to teach my children. This is what I want to pass down. These are the jewels that my children are inheriting. These are the morals and the ideals and the truths that I find most prosperous, that I feel are worth giving to my children. You know, it's been a hard line to toe. I feel like I'm saying it in a very roundabout way, but I know if you're in my age group at all, or you have come into any type of spiritual awakening that was perhaps on the fringe of the conventions of which you've grown up in, or just self-awareness, doesn't even have to be so-called spiritual, but just coming to a new realization of who you are and who you're not and who you want to be, has come with a great contention. These new age kids, like, we can learn a lot from them to some degree because they're a bit more fearless. Like, here it is, like I said, with the emergence of Jesus, it's like he came ordained, anointed for a certain appointment, but he still had to grow through the confines of society as it was for him, even though he surpassed, like, transcended those conventions and that conformity. He did that, which is the evidence as to why anyone can, whether you see it as just a story, an ideal, or truth, God's honest truth, But it's like these kids, they come already, like, literally ready-made to just be themselves. And for us, particularly that are still on the fringe of that crossover moment, like autonomy and our creativity with, what is this, a woman and a child in this boat, right? That is the charge, like, what us being their guidance through this life. We have the burden, more or less, of wisdom and truth to impress upon them, but still not impede their journey. It's like literally having a hard line to toe. Even me, in real time, having to be very conscious about what I'm impressing upon him as an influence from my past or my conventions, and what is just not relevant for him in the era that he's emerged into. He's confident and secure and sure of himself in ways that's almost annoying, to a person like, to me, who's supposed to be keeping them safe and guided and so on and so forth. But then there are certain ways that I have to almost surrender and relent to, like, well, he may not be of the age to believe that he is, well equipped and responsible for whatever the thing is, whatever the contention, because I got a Scorpio child and I'm a Sag. So as you can imagine, we always at odds about something. But in a great deal, it's an inspiration to me, the confidence and boldness that he expresses, that raw energy that he just embodies naturally, to feel like, I know, Mom, I got it. I got it figured out. And to some degree, he absolutely does. And then to some degree, he still needs Mom. And so it's like that energy, that charge for me to know how to be just hands-on enough so that he doesn't murder himself, but also hands-off enough not to impose anything irrelevant onto his path, or anything that he's going to have to make up for later, or have to, I don't know, like, heal from later. Yeah, look at this. Exactly my point. Past life experience with the Six of Cups. Sometimes this is a good expression. Sometimes it's like, like, do we really want to recreate this dynamic? It just depends on what of it has evolved at this point. And there are some things that I am lenient about with my son that I could have never gotten away with as a child, that I could never get away with now as an adult to my parents, and that I wouldn't even think to consider to try to get away with. But it's something within me, thank God, and I guess time will tell if I'm doing this well or not, but we shall see. But there's something within me that's been impressed to be less conventional about my rearing with him, and more understanding, more liberal, to really engage him as just a little person who is already aware of his light, if I cannot taint it, like sort of like the Jesus energy, Whereas like he came here a savior. If he could just not be tainted by society, he may have had an even easier time. But in the same regard, the trials and tribulations are what make us. But I don't want to heap trials and tribulations onto my son that aren't necessary for his journey, that are more of an hindrance to him getting to that direct light, more like literally shaving the learning curve, and I feel like most good parents want to do that, but sometimes it's hard, like I said, when you have the conventions of what you believe to be right in your back pocket, safe and secure, and you almost feel like you may be failing your child if you don't impress those things upon them, even though times have changed, generations have changed, the celestials have changed, the world has evolved. It's like the same thing from the old world isn't going to work on these new kids. They come here already knowing who they are. They just need to be guided in a way, like I said, to not literally murder themselves or each other. And it's hard for them to take us seriously when we're trying to do that and lead and guide them in a certain way, when we're trying to insist on a perspective that they have no connection to whatsoever. That if we're honest about within ourselves, that, like I said, with traditions, it all comes back around. We don't even know why we do some of the things we do. We just do it because it's always been done. So that's why I'm talking about that Pluto Libra generation that's had to really balance themselves in both worlds. Like, is this okay? Is this good? Am I going against God if I do this? Am I sacrificing myself if I don't do that? It's like literally that's been the tug of war, because we were bringing in the generation that without guidance and being reared in a way that is righteous, truly, meaning with integrity and not, filtered with all the junk and gunk that that doesn't even, gratify us anymore, if we're honest. You know what I mean? We would mess it up for the future, and they hold the future, so it's like, it's wild, man. It's wild. Yeah, to move ahead in victory and success and autonomy with the King of Wands. We want to empower them to lead the charge wisely, and it's already hard enough. We know consider how you probably dismissed much of what your parents said, especially when you're younger. I'm sure I did too, even though I was a lot more attentive to what my parents, probably to a fault to some degree, which is my point, that it mattered a great deal to me to have the acceptance and agreement of my parents and acknowledgement and so on and so forth, to the point that when I was called to step out into things that were against the grain, it was a much harder leap for me to make, because I felt like I would be a disappointment to the conditions and conventions that I had grown up accustomed to. And I feel like that's what we want. The kids already have kind of broken that mold anyway, but the thing is that they're a bit more reckless with it. Without the wisdom is where that could be, that's where the reckless abandonment could actually be a detriment, not only to themselves, but to the future that they are ultimately building for us all. Because prayerfully, we'll still be here to experience it, So it's like, for me, I in that same regard, where what my parents felt and said and thought mattered everything to me, whether it appeared to be or not. I know the impact that it made on the decisions that I made for myself, and the delay of those decisions as such. I tried, with that same regard, to allow my son to make different discoveries, and I try to really, not to say my parents did it all wrong, I'm not saying that at all, but it's a different charge on me to leave behind some of the things that I did feel contributed to the value of me as I am in a positive way, but don't necessarily, or will not necessarily, contribute to the prosperity of my son and who he is and where we are right now. Hard line to toe. And I try to be more liberal about how I handle him, so that he feels less controlled and dictated to and more empowered, literally empowered, to make wise decisions and choices within, the reason of his age range for himself, so that that's not foreign to him. He's not accustomed to being told what to do at every turn, which, sometimes, as I said, is annoying and it backfires on me, but it's really just the backfire is me still a push. What it is still a pushback on what I'm accustomed to. But what I'm accustomed to isn't necessarily what is good for him, As I said, only time will tell if I'm in the right vein or not. If he grows up to be as magnificent as I was told he would be in my womb, then there we go. Oh, look, Queen of Wands. Bam. Yeah. I like to think that that's confirmation right there. You're doing all right, Danae. You're doing all right. But it is a challenge, and and here's the kid. Oh, look, the Page of Wands, for him to be, this is perfect. This is it right here. Because I found, as I said with the King of Wands, I found my stability, my authority, and my own decision making. And it was not easy to cross over into my own autonomy, securing my power, to identify what that power is in the first place. What is it that I do have permission or authority, permission, even saying that word, authority to do with my life force, and what don't I, if there even is such a thing? Because our will, which is represented with the Queen of Wands and the King of Wands, is all our own in the grand scheme of things. As I said, Jesus could have said, no, thank you, not to get somebody else to do it. You know what I mean? And the world might have been different, even idealistically, if that had been the case. And such is the same, look, even how it lines up, that if I hadn't decided that there are some things that I can absorb, I can accept, appreciate, even reverence, but there are some things that I absolutely got to leave behind that didn't work that well for me as I've grown and had an opportunity to reflect. And so now I have that knowledge, I have that wisdom, I've established myself powerfully and creatively to know at least what hasn't worked for me, and even to have some wisdom and foresight, perhaps insight first and then foresight, to know what may not work for him either. Because this is a whole different territory. Look how barren this land is. It's dry. It's watery here. It's dry right here. Like the landscape of life that we're in right now is much different than it was even in the 80s and 90s, of which I grew up in, So to try to raise him in a way that barely worked for me, or at least worked for me enough to get me to a point to decide what did and did not work for me, which kudos and thanks to my parents for that much, for sure. Is no disrespect, because as I said, now that I'm a mother, I understand the challenge and the charge. And I understand what it feels like to be confronted with the best and worst of life, and how you're going to acclimate that into now the most prestigious power of all, raising a new generation. The most prestigious honor of all, bringing up the future, literally bringing into fruition the future in the present. I understand. God bless Mary indeed, who knew, like I said, I knew that my son was blessed. I knew that there were some things I would need to do differently within myself before he came to life. And then I knew that he was going to be a challenge when he got here. I felt it. I knew it. I feel like for the most part, moms usually do, if you're tuned in to the gift that motherhood truly is, just as the Divine Mother was. She got a word that she was carrying, a great promise for the nations, like something that was going to change the world. And it did. Like I said, regardless of how you look at Jesus, we're still talking about him today. And she had to carry that energy in her belly, and then bring it to life. Consider the Mary story, where she was young and really, was probably looked down upon because she really she wasn't even yet married to Joseph before she got pregnant. And then there was that stigma, all the things you kind of got to push through, the sloth of this realm just to get to the light of your destiny, let alone to bring someone else or guide someone else to the light of theirs. It's no small feat. No matter who you are, what you do, where you live, it definitely isn't. But I think the point of it all, why I was singing the Christmas song and talking about tradition and what you do and what you carry over and what is for us to be most conscious now, especially in this eighth house energy where things are popping up. And it might be so terrifying to confront, let alone to discover itself, that it's like you might want to push it back down like, no, but it's coming up for a reason, for you to be aware of who you're being, what current you're running on, what traditions, conventions you're still allowing to lead your life, create your reality, and really consider examining very truthfully and honestly what of it is still what has been productive for you in this moment, and what you project will continue to be. Because whether you have children or not, you're still making an imprint on this reality that matters. And if you're not willing to do that sifting, that releasing, what do we call it? Like when you filtering of that current that may or may not, it's like filtering water, which Scorpio energy is, but it's like intense water. It can be tainted easily because our eighth house is most impressionable because it's the dark, deep psyche of which most of us are not even willing to go or even know where to start in terms of what's actually there. It comes out, it materializes in ways that we see, like literally how you consider the King of Wands now looking at what he's materialized. It's the evidence of who you've been all this time, like what battery you're operating on. But then at that point, as it's materialized, it's only good for recognition and for reflection. For recollection in some regard. You can't really change the matter of the material once it has crystallized. That has to happen on a soul level, on a deep, dark psyche level. And those deep waters that run deep, that you're kind of almost afraid to dive into. Consider a lake at midnight. The moon is hanging up high, but it's still a bit mysterious and mystique that you don't know what's really growing in those waters until you get down in them. And that's the invitation, either to get down in them or be open to however that flow filters upward, literally how the star is engaging the water and the earth, how the two come together, how they merge in some ways, in all ways, I should say, how they collide and create the total essence of you. And what of those waters needs to be filtered out? What is residue? What is toxic? What is traumatic that you don't have to carry on any further? Literally, you could pour it back out for it to be transmuted by the heavens in some regard, or naturally in some regard, and you can decide what on the earth is actually good for growing something new, something fertile. That's the choice that we get to make for ourselves most prominently, as we're either raising the future or creating the idea of such from our present perspective. So yeah, judgment, bam, decision making. There already being a decision having been made, and especially if we're talking about of a higher ordinance as to what is endowed to you. It's just a matter of what you're going to be willing to receive. You see how these people have open arms, open heart posture to what's already been written, more or less. Literally, as I keep coming back to the Jesus thing, it's like receiving the how can I say it? I said endowment, and I do like that word, but inheritance of the divine in its totality, not Well, this is enough power for me, like almost being afraid of your potential, because you may feel like, oh, and that's back to this tea bag. You may feel like you don't trust yourself. Like, I don't even know if I could trust myself being all powerful, being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, not feeling like you're trustworthy with that type of force, let alone with unlimited resource, like capital of the divine, like but this is all reflective though. As I said, it's already been ordained. It was already written. It was what you came ready made for. Queen of Wands, King of Wands. It was what you were ready made for and to receive and express before you even came out your mother's womb. It's already been ordained. It's already been written. It's just a matter of what you are in alignment to believe you are worthy and capable of. And what I was going to say is that the bag says trust creates peace. The trusting yourself, and like I said before, being okay with the fact that co-creativity, even that, especially if you think about it from a religious standpoint, that was another charge of mine to really engage my spirituality, coming out of more of a religious mindset. What stays, what goes, what's reverent, what's sacred, and what is obsolete, what is just, what's not relevant to me anymore. Is it relevant to maintain the perspective that certain expressions are demonic? It can't be relevant to me, or else I would have banished myself out of my own destiny, out of my own divine alignment and healing for the fault of believing something that's just been projected onto me ultimately. That even when you engage the scriptures, it doesn't say anywhere that tarot is evil. Even the prophets of that time had different tools and different ways to divine communication between themselves and the Creator. Throughout all the Bible, there's evidence there. So there's no expression, one or the other, that is in the highest vibration, that is less reverent than the one before, or that it's all about the spirit of the man ultimately. And so that was a knowledge and a saving grace that I had to come to really to bring myself to an acceptance of what ultimately I felt was calling me. I wasn't calling it was calling me. And I could have said, get somebody else to do it, and I would have missed, a whole world of magic of which I've been welcomed into at this point, and it ain't no turning back. No way, Jose. No, it's only going to evolve from here. It may not always be tarot or whatever the case may be, but it will never be a resistance to this expression at this point, because it's been the thing that has been the gateway to me ultimately becoming fully aware of who I was designed to be in the first place, of my own identity, separate, and yet somehow reflective of my past experiences. But finding my way to that truth has been the challenge. Judgment here, and what's on the bottom. Okay, Knight of Wands, that's this diffused energy. Yeah, but you know what it is? It's like, it's the freshness, like sort of like the Page of Wands. It's that there it is. It's that balance between these two polarities here. This is the Knight who's mature and adult, seasoned. This is the Page who's who's growing, who's green in some regards. The Wands is kind of like the balance in between the two that stays ambitious, stays excited, eager, ready to express their energy force, excited to connect it with something. This is an exuberance of energy and power toward the judgment already determined in the heavens. It's what I was saying before, like staying in that space of a submission to co-creativity here. It's like he's still just as young and impressionable, even as the Knight of Wands, as he ever will be, as a matter of fact, because there's always some new calling in spirit and in truth to answer to. So we're encouraged to keep our perspective fresh, our passion fresh, to stay excited about the next leg of the journey. You know, of course, because this is coming up as the Knight of Wands, as I said, it almost implies that some guidance is almost necessary to stay on the path and stay focused, because we know the Knight of Wands can get, you know, a little wild and crazy, can be a little bit unreliable, or a little bit unstable in the lowest vibration. He can get a bit distracted by his own lusts, as a matter of fact, and definitely can become overambitious. So this is like the expression, as I said, where we're never not going to need spirit. We're never not going to need God, universe, those intangible forces beyond what we express in the physical, to be with us, to co-create with us, to guide and direct our footsteps, to what do we call it, like what in terms of this being energy or force, it's like to conduct our energy in a certain way, we being the conduit, for sure, you know, and having that, you know, being the middleman of that great force. It still comes from a source, you know what I mean? So therefore it comes with some direction, it comes with some guidance, some, not limitation, but it's like without some, what's the word when we're talking about power? Dang, I hear it, but I can't think of it. But it's like without some type of, like a surge or a circuit type of thing, without say perhaps even, what do they call it? Like not a circuit breaker, but a circuit protector or something like that. Like it's almost a protective force, so that, as I've been saying, we don't murder ourselves. We don't burn out. We don't overstep our bounds, overexert the power that we've been given in ways that hurt ourselves or hurt others. It's like that protection piece has been put in there because the force is so powerful that in this realm, it would almost be inevitable that we could get burned handling it without care and without some type of counsel or consideration otherwise. But like I said, without the conduit itself, the power just is stuck in the source. So it's like having an equally balanced reverence for yourself as the conduit, just as much as you do for the conductor. It is what I'm trying to get down to. And that in itself is revolutionary, especially for my generation, because, as I said, religiously, I've been taught very differently from what I've come into the knowledge and wisdom of for myself. And in this regard, it's that we are lowly, wretched creatures that need God, and God doesn't need us. And without the power of God, we are absolutely nothing. And if God wanted to just wipe us off the planet all in one shot and start all over, that would be, you know, it would be justified, and that we should just be grateful for grace and mercy, and, you know, be meek and mild and lowly in our observance or regard for our own selves, because we are lucky, blessed, at least lucky at best creatures to even have God smile upon us, or to want to be present with us in any way, shape, or form. And I don't see it like that. Like, you know, I just don't see it like that. I don't, you know, I feel like the expressions that reflect that, even in the good book of the Bible, you have to take it at face value, that it's the experience of the men and women of that time, which perhaps now knowing what they know, considering they were live energies and now are on some ancestral realm, or it may be incarnated, I don't know. But now knowing what they know would show us a different way, would teach us a different way, that what they thought was the limitation of God and their power and the connection thereof is not actually what it panned out to be when they, were able, hindsight is 2020, go figure, and that maybe perhaps what they passed down as the truth, the way, and the life to follow is not actually the most holistic approach, given times have evolved. Now, we know that nothing's new under the sun, so they say. I'm not really sure if that's 100% true, but we know that each generation experiences some reflection of the past. Like I said, what you dismissed of your parents now may be dismissed by your children coming from you, and so on and so forth. But still, as I've been saying throughout this entire message, there's a tradition, a way of knowing God, a way of knowing self, and that reflection or introspection thereof, dare I say, is probably much different than what you have grown to believe it to be, than what it actually is, or at least what it's evolving into. Because perhaps maybe it was a certain way before. Like I said, there were certain things that worked for me, but for my son, I don't know, maybe not so much. So maybe it was necessary to see God as this, all-powerful source that would smite you down and punish you, and if you didn't fall in line with certain practices. Maybe that generation needed something a little bit more stringent and more strict, and as they were growing into their maturation of power, they needed some more limited guidelines. And perhaps as it was, even from the evolution, say from Moses to Joshua, there was a different ideal of leadership that transitioned from what Moses knew to be true of God to what Joshua experienced firsthand. Yet he still had the old way, as he grew up in the tradition, to carry with him, and in the confrontation that led him to that threshold of his own self-realization, had to make a decision like, am I going to carry on with this monkey on my back, or am I going to step into these shoes that are all new for me? Literally, God came to him and said, Moses is dead, move on. Now I'm lifting you up. It's your time now. And that's what's happened generation after generation. It's like, that's what I'm saying, like reflective in the sense that it's the same ideal, it's just different circumstances and literally a different timeline. But the charge in itself still remains, and I feel that's what's been ever evolving, say even perhaps from the emergence of Jesus, to see ourselves in that reflection already ready-made, ordained, anointed, appointed for a divine destiny, no matter what the surroundings may project, that is already within us. It never changed from that point of view. Perhaps it always was, as it says, that he was and is to come, but it was just, he became the new emergence of that reality and that truth in a physical form, because before that, people were so distant from the ideal of God that they didn't even really feel worthy to receive that essence and that presence in the way that it had been traditionalized. There were certain limitations put in place religiously that dictated who had access to the divine and who didn't by way of God, and whatever they idealized, whatever they called God, or even that, what the ideal literally of God was at that time. And I feel like we've been ever evolving ever since, and now is no different, where we're supposed to be bold and courageous and almost like crashing into our destiny without any inhibitions. Of course, being the divine knowing that there is guidance necessary, but there not to be an inhibition with the power that we already possess to be courageous and confident as the, be growing wise with time for sure, but always still coming down to being almost like a child of the universe to some degree, because there's always a new evolution to embark upon. And until we idealize ourselves perhaps in a way that none of us is yet privy to, maybe perhaps as God itself in some regard, that although we say that, we really don't receive wholeheartedly, because even now it feels like a bit of an abomination to even speak like God. You're not God. You may be made in the image, but perhaps that's the knowledge that we're being all called into, is that there is no middleman. There is no separation. There is no this or that. It's only you, me, and the expression that we embody and expel from our own unique point of view. Maybe that's all it ever was, and that's all it ever will be. And it's taken a long time for us to get to that truth because of all the projection otherwise, of all the delay and the pass downs of the generations from me believing that you really need to go to church every Sunday to really activate your faith and exercise a true spirit of worship, to me now knowing that I am the embodiment. Wherever I am, there is worship, because everything that I do is with the intention of embodying and expressing the highest vibration of source and force already, not needing to go to be associated with a place or a people or a time or a religion or anything to know that that is what's true for me. And having already broken that convention for myself, now my son, regardless of what the opinion may be, good, bad, or indifferent, he knows that that is not a prerequisite for his divinity. His spirit does not rest and rely on any place or space. He is the embodiment of his truest essence and form, and that God is living within him. So wherever he goes is where God goes, and that's what it comes down to ultimately. Even as I'm saying it now, it's almost like I'm coming to a new knowledge and a proclamation within myself that's been hard to really speak, the true essence of my divinity and the true essence of the God essence of me that I've been taught to perhaps resist or reject or renounce, how dare you type of energy to, yeah, absolutely. Why not? Makes sense. And perhaps that's the energy that we've all we're coming, if you choose to receive it that way, to the understanding of energetically. But now it's like, I feel like the evidence of it's going to be like in your face. Like you did this. So what if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, by God, it ain't a pigeon. Like you did this. And yes, there's a source that is all consuming, of which we all get to be tapped into, but that you are just as important as an expression of it as it is what do we call it? Like I don't know, like you're just as important as an expression of it as it is the force of you, if that makes sense. Like one almost doesn't exist, at least not in this realm, without the other, no matter what traditions and religions may teach us. That even when God wanted to bring Jesus into the world, this new idea, this new concept, this new perception of faith and spirituality and the spirit and the man of matter, he did it through a woman and through human tangibility. if it were the case that he could have just wiped the world clean, or wiped the universe clean, and implanted a new perception and concept of reality, then that's what would have happened. But he literally went through the channels of the 3D realm by way of the conception through the woman, the deliverance of the being, to change something altogether in the universe in which was created by that very source and force. So if that in itself is not evidence of the co-creative ideal in its purest form, literally, then I don't even know what is. So again, it's for us, and I'm speaking about it in a very religious way, but it's definitely not confined to that, as I'm sure anyone wise understands, that it's breaking off those limitations and barriers that just don't even matter anymore. They have no value anymore. And only carrying on what truly does, what is prosperous, when Jesus came, he didn't denounce the Bible. He didn't denounce the teachings that he had been reared in. He just expressed them in a way that was more palatable to the masses that he was communicating with. And he expressed them in a way that wasn't hard to understand. It was in stories and parables that people could actually relate to. Same concepts, different expression. He didn't denounce the law. He actually just completed it and showing that it was possible to be spirit and man and still have, a successful life experience, a satisfying life experience to some degree, So it's like really doing what we're called to do in a way that may seem small because it's just you, but just as Jesus did, could make all the difference in turning the tide for the legacy that you've come up through and the legacy that you are leading, which undoubtedly will be the builders of the future world that we inhabit. So if Jesus never came, Lord help us all. I think it would be a very rigid world, even if the concept of Jesus was never a thing. We'd never have the ideal that we could be limitless in the way that we all like to argue about. It wouldn't even be a possibility of a concept. So imagine if you don't do the thing that you feel most called, destined, and designed to do, what your legacy, your progeny, those that are going to be here long after you might miss out on, could really be the sin and the shame. So living your light is what it all comes down to. All right, so I'm done. I hope you got something from that. I know it was a bit much, as I said. Usually the messages that I'm having a hard time spitting out is because it's something that is important, and there's just this resistance here, and I know I'll probably look back on it, and this might actually be a message to inspire a Sunday soul session. Interesting. Kind of like that. A Sunday school session. I think I like that. It may be changing. Sunday soul session. I like that. It might be inspiring that, that something that I may need to dive a little deeper into and write and really let the spirit kind of communicate through that medium. But we shall see. In any event, I'm grateful that you were here and listening now, and that you received what I said most universally, not limited or exclusive at all to what your religious or beliefs may be or what they may not be, because I am open to all ideas and concepts, dark and light. To be honest, you have the will and the right to whatever you feel and believe, and so do I. And this is the space where all are welcome in some way, shape, and form, in every way, shape, and form, as a matter of fact. So thank you again for watching. And until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.